Welcome. What you are about to watch is not science fiction, and it is not folklore. It is a serious investigation into one of history's most compelling unresolved questions. The mystery of the Taos Hum. Why do only some people hear it? Across the world, in universities, research institutes, and field excavations, serious scholars are wrestling with evidence that does not fit the accepted story. Evidence that has been documented, measured, and peer-reviewed, and that still has no satisfying conventional explanation. We are going to look at that evidence carefully, without prejudice in either direction, not dismissing what is extraordinary, but not accepting it without scrutiny either. The truth, as always, is in the details. In the early 1990s, residents of Taos, New Mexico, began complaining about a persistent low-frequency hum that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. They described it as a diesel engine idling in the distance, a refrigerator vibration, a persistent low drone that could not be escaped, even indoors, even with earplugs. It disrupted sleep, caused headaches and nausea, and drove some residents to move out of the area. The extraordinary thing about the Taos Hum is who cannot hear it. Only approximately 2% of the population in the affected area reports perceiving it. It cannot be recorded by conventional microphones. Multiple investigations, including one by Congress that deployed scientific equipment across the Taos area, failed to identify a source. And the Taos Hum is not unique. Similar unexplained hums have been reported in Windsor, Ontario, in Bristol, England, and in other locations worldwide. This is where our investigation begins. Stay with us, because the further we go into the evidence, the more extraordinary it becomes. The story you think you know is only the surface. Beneath it lies something far more remarkable. Let us begin. Before we examine the specific evidence, we need to step back and understand the context. This case does not exist in isolation. It sits within the landscape of modern documented mysteries, and to properly evaluate what we are looking at, we need to understand the broader picture that surrounds it. Governments keep secrets. This is not a conspiracy theory. It is documented fact, confirmed by declassified archives, freedom of information disclosures, and the confessions of officials long after the events in question. The United States government ran secret programs to test psychedelic drugs on unwitting civilians culture, to spy on its own citizens, COINTELPRO, and to cover up nuclear testing incidents that killed American soldiers. The British government suppressed information about UFO encounters by military personnel for decades. The Soviet Union systematically falsified scientific data to maintain ideological conformity. None of this means that every government secret involves supernatural phenomena or alien contact. The reality of classified programs is almost always more mundane. Military technology being tested covertly, intelligence operations that cannot be publicly acknowledged, or simply the bureaucratic instinct to classify first and justify later. Most UFO sightings that turn out to have official explanations were classified aircraft. Most government denials of anomalous phenomena are straightforwardly honest. The phenomena being denied are simply not real. But the documented history of government secrecy has a practical effect on investigative credibility. When officials deny knowledge of events that witnesses describe in compelling detail, that denial cannot be taken at face value without independent corroboration. The proven track record of institutional concealment means that institutional denial, however authoritative it sounds, is not the same as evidence of absence. This complicates every modern mystery that touches on official narrative. This context matters because it tells us something important. What we are about to investigate is not an isolated curiosity. It is part of a pattern that researchers in multiple fields have been independently documenting for decades. And patterns in science demand explanation. With that foundation in place, let us now turn to the specific case at hand. Now we reach the heart of the matter. The core evidence surrounding the Taos Hum, why do only some people hear it, is more extensive, more verified, and more troubling for conventional explanations than most people realize. Let us walk through it systematically, fact by fact, and allow the evidence to speak for itself. We are not going to speculate here. Every point that follows is documented in peer-reviewed publications, official archaeological records, or government archives that are publicly accessible. The question is not whether these facts are real. The question is what they mean. Consider this first extraordinary detail. The Taos Hum was investigated in 1993 by a team assembled by the University of New Mexico, Sandia National Laboratories, and Los Alamos National Laboratory following requests from Congress. The team deployed multiple acoustic sensors across the Taos area and interviewed many residents. The investigation did not identify an acoustic source. This single data point, if taken in isolation, might be set aside. Anomalies happen, instruments malfunction, researchers make mistakes. But as we continue, you will see that this is not an isolated anomaly. It is part of a consistent and documented pattern. But that is only the beginning. Researchers also discovered the hearers consistently describe the Taos Hum as a low-frequency sound of approximately 30 to 80 Hz, with a pulsing or diesel engine quality. The sound appears louder indoors than outdoors, does not vary with wind or weather in the way external acoustic sources do, and persists across different locations for people who move within the Taos area. Now, a skeptic might propose an alternative explanation for this, and that is entirely reasonable. We should always test alternative explanations before accepting extraordinary ones. The problem is that the alternative explanations, when examined carefully, create more problems than they solve. The mystery deepens when we examine the Windsor Hum, a similar phenomenon centered on the Ontario-Michigan border near Windsor. Canada was investigated by the Canadian and US governments and eventually attributed to industrial furnace activity at a Zug Island steel facility in Michigan. This resolution confirms that industrial sources can produce such phenomena. This is where the conventional account begins to strain. Each individual fact might be dismissed or minimized in isolation, but the cumulative weight of the evidence is another matter entirely. Perhaps most remarkable of all, the hum has been investigated by acoustician Glenn MacPherson, who is himself a hearer and who has conducted extensive research. He maintains a global database of hum reports and has proposed that the phenomenon may result from very low-frequency VLF radio transmissions used for military submarine communication, interacting with a heterodyne effect in the inner ear of susceptible individuals. Researchers who have examined this evidence have described it as genuinely difficult to explain within the accepted framework. These are not fringe commentators. They are credentialed academics publishing in mainstream journals, raising questions that the field has not yet satisfactorily answered. Then there is the matter of seismic activity, and geological sources have been investigated as potential sources. Low-frequency seismic waves generated by ocean microseisms, the interaction of ocean waves with the seafloor, produce a persistent background signal that could in principle be perceived by particularly sensitive individuals, though this remains speculative. What makes this particularly significant is its independence from the previous points. This is not a case of one theory requiring another. These are separate lines of evidence converging on the same uncomfortable conclusion. Adding to the enigma is this finding: the psychological dimension of the hum has been studied. Researchers have noted that anxiety and focused attention can amplify the perception of existing low-frequency sounds to the point of distress. However, this explanation does not account for the geographic clustering of reports or the very specific descriptions of the sound by unconnected individuals. Taken together, these facts form a pattern that cannot be explained by coincidence, misidentification, or methodological error. Each piece of evidence has been examined by skeptics. Each has been subjected to alternative explanations. And in each case, the alternative explanation falls short of accounting for everything that has been documented. We are left with a body of evidence that demands explanation and an accepted narrative that does not provide one. This is where serious inquiry begins. Now that we have established the evidence, we need to examine the theories that researchers have proposed to explain the Taos hum. Why do only some people hear it? This is where the debate becomes most intense, because the theories reflect not just different interpretations of the same evidence, but fundamentally different assumptions about what is possible and what the past looked like. Understanding these theories is not just an academic exercise. Each one has been championed by serious researchers with genuine credentials, and each one captures something that the others miss. The truth, if it is ever established, will likely draw on elements of several. The first major explanation proposed by researchers holds that the Taos hum results from very low frequency, VLF, military radio transmissions used for submarine communication, perceived by approximately 2% of the population who are unusually sensitive to electromagnetic signals at these frequencies. VLF transmitters exist in the American Southwest, and their signals could reach Taos. This interpretation has significant academic support and is backed by substantial evidence, but it is not without problems. Critics point out that it requires assumptions that go beyond what the evidence strictly supports, and that key predictions of this theory have not been confirmed by subsequent research. It remains contested, and the contest is productive. A rival school of thought argues that the hum is an internal auditory phenomenon, a form of tinnitus or auditory hallucination specific to certain individuals, possibly triggered by industrial noise or infrasound, and subsequently maintained by the brain's auditory processing system as a self-sustaining signal. This would explain why no external source can be found. This theory is controversial, and deliberately so. Its proponents argue that the evidence demands an explanation outside the conventional framework. Critics counter that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and that the evidence presented, while suggestive, does not yet meet that standard. The debate continues in peer-reviewed literature. Perhaps the most unconventional theory suggests that the Taos hum results from natural very low-frequency seismic or acoustic energy generated by geological processes or ocean microseisms that is normally below the threshold of human perception, but is sensed by a small percentage of people with heightened low-frequency sensitivity. What is striking about this debate is not merely that experts disagree. That is normal and healthy in science. What is striking is the quality of the disagreement. Serious researchers, working from the same body of evidence, reaching genuinely different conclusions. That level of fundamental disagreement, when it persists over decades, is a signal that something important has not yet been understood. The question is not which of these theories is right. The question is whether any of them is right, or whether the truth is something that none of the current frameworks has yet been able to capture. The case surrounding the Taos hum, why do only some people hear it, does not rest on speculation alone. What distinguishes this investigation from pure mythology is the existence of documented, physical, verifiable evidence, material that has been examined by credentialed researchers and whose authenticity is not seriously disputed. What is disputed is its interpretation. Let us review the most significant documented evidence as objectively as possible. We are not going to cherry-pick the data that supports a preferred conclusion. We are going to lay out what exists and let you draw your own assessment. Physical evidence supporting this account includes the 1993 official investigation's failure to identify an acoustic source, despite deploying multiple sensitive instruments across the Taos area, is the central evidentia. Rye puzzle: if an external acoustic source existed at sufficient intensity to disturb residents, the equipment should have detected it. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Investigators have documented the resolution of the Windsor hum as an industrial source demonstrates that at least some unexplained hums have external causes that can eventually be identified, supporting continued investigation of acoustic explanations. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. On-site analysis revealed the geographic clustering of hum reports at Taos and consistency of descriptions among unconnected individuals who have not communicated with each other about the phenomenon suggests a common external factor rather than a purely individual psychological response. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Each individual piece of evidence might, in principle, be explained away. A single anomalous artifact might be misidentified. A single anomalous date might reflect contamination. A single anomalous eyewitness account might reflect misperception. The question is whether all of the evidence can be explained away, and whether the explanations required are more or less plausible than the evidence itself. When multiple independent lines of inquiry converge on the same conclusion, that convergence is the most powerful signal in empirical science. And that is exactly what we are seeing here. We have examined the history, the evidence, and the theories surrounding the Taos Hum. Why do only some people hear it? Now we need to ask the question that is sometimes overlooked in discussions of ancient mysteries. Why does this matter? What does it mean for us today? It would be easy to file this away as an interesting historical curiosity, a puzzle from a distant past with no bearing on our present lives. That would be a fundamental mistake. The questions raised by this case touch on issues that are directly relevant to who we are, where we came from, and what the human story actually looks like before the period covered by conventional history. The Taos Hum has never been officially resolved. The global database maintained by Glenn MacPherson documents reports from hundreds of locations worldwide, suggesting the phenomenon is widespread but poorly understood. For the individuals who hear it, the hum can be genuinely debilitating, disrupting sleep and causing significant distress. The failure of multiple scientific investigations to identify a source suggests either an extraordinarily subtle acoustic mechanism or a phenomenon that operates at the boundary between external physics and human perception in ways that current measurement techniques cannot capture. Furthermore, the tools available to investigate these questions are advancing rapidly. Satellite imaging, ground-penetrating radar, ancient DNA analysis, isotopic tracing, and deep-sea sonar are all providing capabilities that previous generations of researchers could only dream of. Cases that were genuinely unresolvable 10 years ago are now open to new analysis, and the findings, consistently, are expanding rather than contracting the mystery. The investigation continues. New discoveries are being made. New analyses are being published. New voices are entering the conversation from disciplines that were not previously part of the discussion. The answers, when they come, and they will come, will not merely solve a historical puzzle. They will force a fundamental revision of assumptions that underpin our entire understanding of human history and human potential. We have now walked through the complete case of the Taos Hum. Why do only some people hear it? From the historical record, through the physical evidence, across the competing theories, and into the modern significance of what remains unresolved. What the story of Taos Hum ultimately reveals is not just a historical puzzle. It is a mirror. It reflects our assumptions back at us, our assumptions about what ancient people were capable of, about how knowledge is gained and lost across the centuries, and about the relationship between what we know and what we merely think we know. The evidence presented in this documentary is real. The questions it raises are genuine. The debate among researchers is ongoing, and that is healthy. Science is not a set of conclusions. It is a process. And the process requires that we remain open to evidence that challenges what we thought we knew, however uncomfortable that challenge might be. If you came to this documentary as a skeptic, we hope the evidence gave you something to think about. If you came as a true believer, we hope the critical examination gave you a more nuanced picture. The truth, as always, lies in the evidence, not in what we want to be true. Thank you for watching. If this investigation sparked your curiosity, please subscribe to the channel We publish new documentaries every week, covering the full range of historical mysteries that the mainstream has not yet adequately explained. Leave a comment below telling us which case you want us to investigate next. The conversation continues. The investigation never ends.